Unknown coordinates. Post-Halo ring destruction. Pelican dropship. Echo 419. The Pelican's cockpit shook with violence that made controlled flight impossible. Hull groaning under stress that atmospheric re-entry couldn't explain. Alarms screaming warnings about systems failing in sequence that suggested catastrophic cascade rather than simple mechanical fault. Master Chief sat in pilot's seat with hands gripping controls that were becoming increasingly unresponsive. His Mjolnir armor's HUD displaying readouts that made no tactical sense. Slip space coordinates that didn't match any UNSC navigation database. Energy signatures that violated known physics. And most concerning, complete absence of familiar stars that should have been visible regardless of positional displacement. He was alone. No UNSC command structure providing tactical oversight. No Marine fire teams depending on his leadership. No orbital support waiting to provide fire missions. Just Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, operating solo Pelican after evacuating Halo Ring before its detonation, conducting what should have been routine transit back to UNSC-controlled space. Should have been. Cortana's avatar materialized on the holographic pedestal with crystalline precision that pre-Rampancy stability provided. Her expression carrying concern that smart AI weren't supposed to display, but years of partnership with Chief had cultivated into genuine emotional response. Chief, I'm detecting a slip space fluctuation. This isn't UNSC navigation data. The dimensional coordinates are wrong. The space-time curvature doesn't match any stellar phenomenon I have in my databases. We're not just off course. We're somewhere that shouldn't exist according to established astrophysics. Chief's response came with characteristic brevity that made every word count. Cause? Cortana paused. Fractional hesitation that would have been imperceptible to normal human, but Chief had learned to read as indication she was processing information that violated her expectations. Unknown, and that's not something I say often. I've analyzed every possible variable, checked for Covenant sabotage, evaluated for Forerunner technology interference, run diagnostics on Pelican slipspace drive 17 times. Everything indicates the breach originated externally. Something pulled us off our trajectory. Something with power signature that exceeds anything I've encountered, including Halo's main weapon systems. The slip space rupture intensified with sensation that made reality feel negotiable. Not physical force that Chief's enhanced physiology could brace against, but fundamental wrongness that suggested the universe was failing to maintain coherent structure. Dimensional barriers becoming permeable in ways that allowed bleeding between realities that physics insisted should remain forever separate. Hard drop hit like Mach round impact. Pelican plummeted through aperture that looked like wound in space itself, falling from slip space into normal reality with violence that made emergency landing procedures irrelevant. Mind gravity reasserting itself with vengeance that made Chief's internal organs compress, despite Mjolnir's inertial compensation. They crashed. Not controlled descent with reverse thrusters managing velocity. Not emergency landing with pilot fighting to minimize damage. Just uncontrolled impact that turned military dropship into meteor. Hull scraping across industrial district's concrete with shower of sparks that painted night crimson. Momentum carrying them through abandoned warehouse before friction finally arrested motion. Chief's shields flared with energy drain that made his HUD flash warnings. But Mjolnir's structural integrity held. Armor designed to withstand everything from plasma bombardment to orbital drops protecting him from crash that would have liquefied normal human. He performed immediate threat assessment with training that made survival instinct automatic. Weapons check showed MA-5C assault rifle intact and loaded, M6G Magnum secured in holster, combat knife in sheath, and most critically, motion tracker showed no immediate hostile contacts within detection range. Cortana's voice came through helmet speakers with relief that AI shouldn't technically feel. Well, that could have gone worse. Hull integrity at 40%, main engines offline, communications array destroyed, slip space drive completely fried. We're not flying anywhere without major repairs that we don't have parts or facilities to complete. And Chief, her avatar flickered. Wherever we are, this isn't human-controlled space. I'm detecting atmospheric composition consistent with Earth but architectural patterns that suggest different technological development path. No UNSC signatures, no Covenant energy readings, no recognizable military installations. We're completely cut off. Chief stood from pilot's seat with movements that made half-ton armor look weightless, checking chamber on his rifle with muscle memory that decades of combat had refined. Then we adapt. Standard survival protocols. Establish perimeter. Gather intelligence. Make contact with local population if non-hostile. Find resources. Determine location. Plan extraction. And if extraction isn't possible? Cortana asked with question that carried weight of implications she'd already calculated but needed Chief to acknowledge. Our Master Chief looked through Pelican's cracked viewport at cityscape that resembled Earth, but felt wrong in ways his tactical assessment couldn't immediately quantify. Buildings that looked too old, streets that seemed too empty, technology level that appeared inconsistent with timeline he expected. Then we make this work. I've been stranded before. I've survived worse. And I've never failed a mission because circumstances were inconvenient. We assess. We adapt. We complete whatever objective presents itself. That's what Spartans do. He descended Pelican's damaged ramp with rifle raised to low-ready position, boots hitting pavement of what appeared to be abandoned industrial district. Warehouses with broken windows, streets littered with debris that suggested recent conflict, and graffiti marking territory in language he couldn't immediately read. But Cortana was presumably analyzing. The city beyond looked like Earth circa late 20th or early 21st century. Cars that still used internal combustion rather than hydrogen fuel cells. Buildings that topped out around 20 stories instead of scraping clouds. Infrastructure that suggested civilization had developed along different technological path than UNSC timeline. Metro City, Cortana reported with tone suggesting she'd accessed local data networks with speed that made human hacking look glacial. Population approximately 2 million. Located somewhere that geographical coordinates suggest should be near what we'd call Southeast Asia, but political boundaries don't match any UNSC records. Current date, according to local networks, is... She paused. Is impossible. Either we've traveled through time or this is alternate reality where human history diverged significantly from timeline we know. Technology level is inconsistent. Some areas show advancement comparable to late UNSC colony standards. Others look pre-information age. It's like civilization developed unevenly, with pockets of sophistication surrounded by relative primitiveness. Chief's motion tracker pinged with contact that made his training activate automatically. Single target on rooftop approximately 50 meters distant. Elevated position suggesting overwatch or sniper placement. Movement patterns indicating observation rather than immediate attack. But threat assessment remained uncertain. He raised rifle toward contact with precision that made targeting instinctive. And heard voice that made situation immediately more complicated. Female, carrying amusement that combat zone shouldn't inspire. Tone suggesting she was entertained rather than threatened by armored soldier pointing military-grade weapon in her direction. "Oh, shiny soldier boy," the voice called with playful malice that made Chief's tactical assessment flag her as dangerous despite lacking obvious armament. "You don't look like you belong here. New in town? Lost? Or just crashing through my neighborhood for fun?" Figure dropped from rooftop with acrobatic grace that made the fall look choreographed. Landing in crouch that absorbed impact normal human skeleton couldn't withstand. Rising to full height with posture that radiated confidence bordering on arrogance. She was young, early 20s based on visual assessment, with build that combined athletic conditioning with dangerous elegance, wearing outfit that prioritized mobility over protection, and most notably, left eye covered by technological device that Chief's HUD immediately flagged as containing active energy signature inconsistent with normal human biology. Chief scanned her with Mjolnir's integrated sensors while maintaining firing solution that training made automatic. Cortana's analysis came through private channel. Biometric readings are unusual. Enhanced musculature beyond what normal human conditioning achieves. Bone density approximately 1.3 times baseline. Cardiovascular efficiency that suggests either genetic modification or extensive biochemical augmentation. And that device over her eye. It's generating energy signatures similar to what I'd expect from compact fusion reactor, but biology integrated rather than externally mounted. She's enhanced, possibly comparable to ODST performance levels, potentially dangerous if hostile. Hostile? Chief asked with question directed at both Cortana's assessment and the woman who was studying him with interest that made his combat instincts activate. The woman, Juri Han, though Chief lacked context for that name's significance in local martial arts community, smiled with expression that made amusement look predatory. Let's find out. She moved, not walking or running but blitzing, speed that made her form blur despite Chief's enhanced perception, closing 50-meter distance in less than a second, and legs sweeping toward his helmet with kick that carried enough force to decapitate normal human. Chief's shields flared as impact connected, energy barrier absorbing kinetic energy that would have shattered skull, his HUD displaying drain percentage that suggested her strikes carried significantly more force than baseline human could generate. He rolled with impact's momentum rather than resisting directly, letting Mjolnir's servo systems distribute force across armor's frame, coming up in defensive stance with rifle tracking her movement despite speed that made targeting difficult. Fast, Cortana observed with analytical detachment that pre-rampancy allowed. Significantly faster than normal human, approaching lower-end Spartan mobility despite lacking powered armor. And that kick generated approximately 2.3 tons of force. She's enhanced through methods I can't immediately identify, biological augmentation combined with what appears to be Kai-based energy manipulation. That's not technology I have reference for. That's something else. Juri landed from her kick with grace that made combat look like performance art, studying Chief with expression mixing satisfaction and curiosity. You're slow, soldier boy, but you're tough. Those shields of yours are interesting. Want to see how many hits they can take? She attacked again. Combination that mixed martial arts technique with acrobatic impossibility, kicks and strikes flowing together with rhythm that suggested years of training. Each impact making Chief's shields flare with energy drain that was manageable but accumulating. Chief adapted, as not trying to match her speed. That was tactical impossibility given mobility disparity. Instead, he predicted, analyzed her attack patterns, recognized that despite chaotic appearance, her combinations followed structure, preferred certain angles, telegraphed major strikes through subtle weight shifts that his enhanced perception could detect. You're predictable, Chief said while executing counter that caught her mid-combination, his armored hand deflecting kick that would have connected with his torso, using her own momentum to throw her off balance. Juri recovered with backflip that made disruption look intentional, landing in stance that radiated readiness. Oh, you can learn. That's fun. Most people I fight don't survive long enough to adapt. But you, her smile widened. You're different, disciplined, trained, military. I can see it in how you move, like you fought thousands of battles and survived them all through being smarter than everyone trying to kill you. Chief's response was tactical rather than conversational. He feinted left while pulling flashbang from belt, timing throw to coincide with her expected counterattack, detonation occurring exactly when her enhanced eye was tracking his movement. The feng shui engine, technological enhancement grafted to her eye that processed Kai energy and amplified her combat capabilities. Overloaded from sensory input, it wasn't designed to filter. Photonic burst overwhelming systems that gave her enhanced perception. Juri staggered with disorientation that momentarily disrupted her perfect balance. Chief moved with Spartan efficiency that made killing look clinical. Combat knife drawn in motion too fast for normal human to perceive. Slash executed with precision that decades of close quarters training had perfected. Steel cutting across her good eye with depth that drew blood without causing permanent damage. Controlled violence, measured response, warning rather than execution. Juri stumbled back with hand rising to face instinctively, blood running between fingers from wound that would scar but wouldn't blind. her expression shifting through shock and pain into something that Chief's tactical assessment flagged as concerning. Laughter. She was laughing, despite injury, despite being outmaneuvered, despite clearly losing engagement, laughing with genuine amusement that made pain seem irrelevant. "Hey," Jury said while examining blood on her fingers with fascination rather than alarm. "You scarred me? You actually scarred me? Do you have any idea how long it's been since someone drew my blood? Since someone made me feel anything except boredom?" Her intact eye locked onto Chief's visor with intensity that made observation feel invasive. "What's your name, soldier?" "Fight's over," Chief replied with finality that made statement sound like tactical assessment rather than threat. "Stand down. I don't want to kill you, but I will if you force escalation." Jury retreated with movements that suggested she was choosing withdrawal rather than fleeing defeat, backing toward shadows while maintaining eye contact that made disengagement feel temporary. "Oh, I'm going to enjoy breaking you, Spartan. I'm going to study you. Learn everything about how you fight, find every weakness, and then—" her smile became something predatory. "Then I'm going to make you scream. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Because you just became my favorite toy, and I don't share my toys with anyone." She disappeared into urban landscape with speed that made tracking impossible, leaving Chief standing in abandoned street with tactical situation that had become significantly more complicated. Cortana's avatar reappeared with expression mixing concern and calculation. "Well, that was interesting. And by interesting, I mean terrifying. She's obsessed with you now. I could see it in her biometric readings. Elevated heart rate, not from fear, but excitement. Neurological patterns consistent with fixation. She's going to come back, repeatedly, and each time she'll be more prepared. More dangerous. That's not ideal when we're stranded in unknown location with no backup and limited resources." Chief holstered his knife while scanning perimeter for additional threats. "Then we prepare for her return. But first, we need intelligence. Need to understand where we are. What threats exist beyond enhanced martial artists? What resources are available? And whether extraction is possible." "Agreed," Cortana confirmed. "I'm detecting multiple energy signatures throughout the city similar to what that woman displayed. This world has enhanced combatants. Plural. Some showing power levels that exceed what she demonstrated. We're not just dealing with one dangerous individual. We're in an environment where superhuman martial artists apparently operate openly. That changes threat assessment significantly." Master Chief looked toward city skyline where light suggested civilization continued despite his crash landing in industrial district. "Then we adapt to that reality. I've fought Covenant, Flood, Forerunner constructs. Enhanced humans with energy-based abilities are just another variable to account for. We make contact, establish whether local population is hostile or potential ally, and we survive until extraction becomes possible." But even as he began moving toward populated areas, Chief's tactical instincts registered truth that Cortana's analysis supported. The woman, Jury, would return. Her obsession wasn't tactical consideration that logic could overcome. It was personal fixation that rational deterrence wouldn't satisfy. She wanted to fight him, wanted to break him, wanted to prove she could defeat Soldier who'd survived everything Covenant could deploy. And in a world where martial artists achieved superhuman capability through discipline and Kai manipulation, obsessed combatant with enhanced abilities represented threat that MJOLNIR shields and military training might not adequately counter. The war had followed him, just wearing different face. Metro City, downtown district. 18 hours after crash landing. Master Chief moved through urban environment with tactical awareness that made civilian population's casual disregard for security protocols almost painful to observe. Pedestrians walking without maintaining situational awareness. Vehicles operating in patterns that created predictable ambush points. Buildings with sight lines that sniper could exploit without meaningful counter-surveillance. This world had forgotten what war looked like. Or perhaps had never experienced warfare on scale that made paranoia survival trait rather than psychological disorder. Cortana's voice provided continuous analysis through helmet speakers while she processed information gathered from cities' networks. I've been analyzing local data. This world's history diverged from UNSC timeline significantly. They've had wars, conventional conflicts, regional disputes, standard human territorial aggression, but nothing approaching Covenant-scale existential threat. Nothing that unified humanity against external enemy. Instead, their conflicts remain localized. Nation against nation, ideology against ideology. And most significantly, her tone shifted. They have individuals whose combat capability exceeds what military organizations can deploy. These world warriors, as they're called, operate outside normal command structures. Personal power that makes them more valuable than entire battalions. That's created interesting dynamic where governments can't fully control their most dangerous assets. Chief maintained low profile while navigating crowds that parted unconsciously around his armored form. Mjolnir made stealth impossible in populated areas, but Cortana had modified his armor's identification transponders to broadcast signals suggesting he was private security contractor rather than alien soldier. Explanation that local population apparently accepted without excessive questioning. I'm detecting no UNSC signals. Cortana continued with statement that carried weight of implications she'd been processing since arrival. No slipspace signatures, no Shaw Fujikawa translite communications. We're completely cut off from UNSC command structure. From what I can determine, we're either in alternate reality where UNSC never existed, or we've traveled so far from known space that conventional navigation is meaningless. Either way. She paused. Extraction isn't happening without significant technological breakthrough that I can't currently engineer with available resources. We're stranded, Chief. Potentially, permanently. Then we make allies. Chief replied with pragmatic acceptance that circumstances couldn't be changed through denial. His tactical assessment recognizing that lone Spartan operating without support infrastructure would eventually be overwhelmed by accumulated threats. Local population appears non-hostile. Technology level suggests they have manufacturing capability. And those enhanced combatants you detected might represent force multiplication if properly coordinated. We've worked with civilian resistance before. This is same principle, different scale. He'd been moving toward coordinates that Cortana identified as containing unusual energy signatures consistent with what Jury had displayed. Not tracking her specifically, but investigating phenomenon that might explain how this world's combatants achieved superhuman capability without UNSC augmentation protocols. The coordinates led to training facility that looked almost ancient by UNSC standards. Traditional dojo architecture that predated modern construction techniques. Wooden structure that prioritized aesthetic over defensive positioning. Open design that sniper could exploit from dozen angles. And inside, figure that made Chief's motion tracker register threat despite lack of obvious weapons. Man in simple white GI performing kata with precision that suggested decades of refinement. Movements flowing with economy that wasted no energy. Strikes executed against invisible opponents with force that made air itself audible despite no physical contact. Ryu, though Chief lacked context for that name's legendary status in martial arts community. The man stopped mid-form as Chief approached, turning with awareness that suggested he detected armored soldiers' presence long before motion tracker registered mutual observation. You're the one who crashed in Industrial District, the soldier in green armor. Word travels fast in martial arts community, especially when someone scars Jury Han and lives to walk away. His voice carried calm that transcended normal confidence into something approaching perfect centeredness. You move like warrior, fight like soldier, but carry yourself like you've seen things that most people can't imagine. What brings you to my dojo? Chief's response came with honesty that tactical situation seemed to warrant. I'm stranded. Need intelligence about this world. Need allies if situation deteriorates. You're enhanced combatant. Cortana's analysis suggests you possess capabilities beyond baseline human. I want to understand how. Want to know if those capabilities can be replicated or countered. And want to determine if you're potential ally or future threat. Ryu's expression shifted through something that might have been approval. Direct. Honest. Refreshing change from typical warriors who approach with false courtesy, masking ulterior motives. I sense discipline in you. Purpose. Dedication to something beyond personal power. That suggests we might speak same language despite coming from different worlds. He gestured toward training area. You want to understand, Kiai? Best way is demonstration. Fight me, not to injury, not to death, but to understanding. Let me see how soldiers' discipline compares to warriors' way. Combat assessment, Cortana interjected through private channel. He's not showing hostile intent. Biometric readings indicate elevated readiness but not aggression. Heart rate consistent with athlete preparing for exercise rather than fighter expecting lethal engagement. This appears to be genuine offer of sparring rather than disguised ambush. Though I should note, his energy signature exceeds what Jury displayed. Significantly. If he's hostile, this could be problematic. Chief considered tactical implications, engaging unknown combatant without backup, in unfamiliar environment, against opponent whose capabilities weren't fully assessed. Standard protocol said decline and withdraw. But standard protocol assumed UNSC support existed. Here, building relationships with local power structures might be only path to long-term survival. Non-lethal engagement, Chief confirmed while setting MA5C aside and unsealing combat knife to demonstrate he wasn't carrying bladed weapons into sparring match. I want to understand your capabilities. You want to assess mine. Mutual intelligence gathering through controlled combat. Acceptable terms. Ryu assumed stance that looked deceptively simple. Feet positioned for optimal balance. On hands raised in guard that covered center line, while maintaining offensive capability. Posture radiating readiness that made stillness look like coiled spring. Begin when ready, Ryu said with invitation that transcended simple challenge. Chief moved with Spartan efficiency. Testing jab designed to probe defenses rather than cause damage. Strike executed with speed that normal human couldn't perceive. Ryu deflected with minimal movement that made Chief's enhanced strength irrelevant, redirecting force rather than blocking directly. Counterstrike flowing from defense with precision that targeted Mjolnir's joint seals, where armor was most vulnerable. Chief's shields absorbed impact that would have damaged unprotected tissue, but force behind strike made his HUD flash warnings about energy drain that accumulated faster than Jury's attacks had achieved. He's stronger, Cortana assessed with tone mixing analysis and concern. That strike generated approximately 4 tons of force, double what Jury achieved, and his technique is more refined, more efficient. He's not wasting movement, not telegraphing intentions. Chief, this is combatant whose skill level approaches Sangheili Honor Guard, possibly exceeds. We need to take this seriously. Chief adapted his approach, not trying to overpower opponent whose strength matched or exceeded his own, but using Mjolnir's advantages. Superior durability, enhanced reaction time courtesy of neural interface, and tactical flexibility that powered armor provided. They exchanged combination that made training area blur with speed. Strikes and counters flowing together with rhythm that suggested both combatants were operating at levels far beyond baseline human. Ryu's key-enhanced attacks testing Chief's shields, while Mjolnir's servo-assisted movements created openings that martial arts training hadn't prepared Ryu to defend against. Interesting, Ryu observed while maintaining engagement that made conversation during combat look effortless. Your armor provides strength, speed, protection, but your technique is military, efficient, designed to end fights quickly rather than test limits. You fight to survive, to complete objectives, not to prove superiority or seek enlightenment through combat. That's soldier's way, honorable in its own right. But different from path I walk. Chief executed throw that should have worked against opponent whose mass was significantly less than Mjolnir-enhanced soldier, using leverage and momentum to force Ryu off balance. Ryu flowed with throw rather than resisting, converting momentum into spinning kick that struck Chief's helmet with force that made his shields drop to 30%, landing in crouch that suggested he'd maintained complete control throughout maneuver. Your shields are impressive, Ryu continued with assessment that made analysis sound conversational, but they have limits. Deplete them, and armor becomes liability rather than asset. Weight without protection. Mobility hampered by mass that no longer provides defensive advantage. You're strong, fast for someone in armor that heavy. But I've fought opponents who achieved similar capability through Kai alone. Through discipline that makes body into weapon that technology can't replicate. Question becomes, he rose from crouch. Can soldier's method overcome warrior's discipline? Or does true strength come from within, rather than external enhancement? Before Chief could formulate response, proximity sensors activated with alert that made tactical situation immediately more complicated. Door to dojo exploded inward with force that reduced wood to splinters. Not conventional breaching charge, but key-enhanced strike that made destruction look casual. Figure entering with speed that made Jury's earlier blitz look restrained. Female voice carried across training area with authority that transcended normal command presence. Ryu! We've detected unusual activity in... She stopped mid-sentence as her eyes registered Chief's armored form. In Industrial District, where something crashed, and apparently that something is here in your dojo, and why aren't you fighting it? Chun-Li, though again Chief lacked context, evaluating threat with instincts that law enforcement and Interpol training had cultivated into automatic response. He's not hostile, Ryu replied with calm that suggested explosions and aggressive entries were normal occurrence. We're sparring, assessing capabilities. He's stranded warrior seeking allies. I sense no deception, no malice, just soldier far from home trying to survive in unfamiliar world. Chun-Li's stance didn't relax despite Ryu's assessment. Her eyes tracking Chief with suspicion that years of hunting criminals had made default state. Stranded soldier in advanced armor that my contacts in military R&D say doesn't match any known technology. Carrying weapons that analysis suggests operate on principles we haven't developed. Appearing through dimensional breach that satellites detected but couldn't explain. And you're just sparring with him like this is normal? Everything about this situation is abnormal, Cortana interjected, her avatar manifesting on external holographic projector that made her visible to both martial artists. But abnormal doesn't mean hostile. I'm Cortana, smart AI, his partner. We were displaced through slipspace accident that we didn't initiate and can't currently reverse. We're not invaders, not advanced scouts, not reconnaissance for invasion force. We're refugees who happen to be soldiers before circumstances made us homeless. And we're seeking cooperation rather than conflict, because conflict in environment where we lack support infrastructure is tactically inadvisable. Chun-Li processed AI's statement with analytical mind that law enforcement work had refined. AI, artificial intelligence, that's science fiction. That's not technology that exists. Not with capability you're demonstrating, consciousness, personality, independent thought. That suggests technological development far beyond anything Earth has achieved. Different Earth, Cortana clarified. Different timeline, different technological development path. Where we're from, AI assists military operations, manages complex systems, provides tactical analysis. We're tools, partners, sometimes friends. And in this case, only thing preventing Chief from being completely isolated in reality, he doesn't understand. Before Chun-Li could respond, Third Presence announced itself with voice that made military authority sound natural. Stand down, Chun-Li. If they were hostile, Ryu would be fighting rather than talking. And that armor... The speaker entered through destroyed doorway with posture that decades of military service had made instinctive. That armor is military, real military, not police surplus or private security costume. That's combat platform designed for actual warfare against enemies that conventional forces can't handle. Guile, though Chief's tactical database was building profiles without having names. You military? Guile asked while studying MJOLNIR, with professional assessment that recognized quality engineering. Yes, Chief confirmed with single word that carried weight of 3 decades service. Guile's stance shifted from defensive alert to something approaching respect. Then we speak the same language. I'm Colonel William F. Guile, United States Air Force. Currently operating with Interpol on counter-terrorism operations that... He paused. That probably sound mundane compared to whatever you've been fighting if that armor is any indication of threat level you're designed to counter. What's your rank? Unit? And why are you in Metro City instead of reporting to proper military authorities? Chief considered how much to reveal, recognizing that establishing credibility with local military might provide resources that martial artists couldn't access. Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, United Nations Space Command, Naval Special Warfare. I operate independently due to mission parameters that don't translate to conventional command structure. And I'm here because dimensional displacement didn't give me choice of destination. As for reporting to authorities, his tone carried weight. My command structure doesn't exist in this reality. Chain of command I answer to is separated by dimensional barrier I can't cross. That makes me effectively independent operator, seeking alliance with local forces who understand military necessity, who recognize that sometimes cooperation across organizational boundaries is survival requirement rather than political choice. Guile processed that statement with understanding that came from operating in gray areas where official channels were inadequate. Independent operator with no country to answer to, no backup, no extraction option, and capabilities that suggest you're designed for warfare that makes our conflicts look like police actions. That's, he exhaled, that's either opportunity or disaster waiting to happen. Depends entirely on whether your objectives align with ours or conflict with stability we're trying to maintain. My objective is survival, Chief stated with honesty that tactical situation warranted. Survival requires resources. Resources require allies. Allies require trust built through demonstrated reliability. I help you with threats your normal forces can't handle. You provide intelligence about environment I don't understand and resources that extended operations require. Mutually beneficial arrangement that makes cooperation logical choice regardless of whether we trust each other personally. Ryu stepped forward with expression that suggested he'd reached decision. He fought Jury and survived. More than survived. Scarred her. Made her retreat. That alone suggests his capability exceeds normal threshold. And I sense no darkness in him, no malice, just warrior's dedication to duty that transcends personal interest. If he's willing to fight beside us, Ryu looked at Guile and Chun-Li. Then I advocate we accept his offer, because threats we face are escalating, and soldiers who can make Juri-Han retreat are assets we should cultivate rather than alienate. Before anyone could respond to Ryu's assessment, Chief's motion tracker activated with proximity alert that made every combat instinct scream warning. A familiar energy signature approaching from rooftop trajectory. Cortana confirmed what tactical sensors suggested. It's her, Jury. She's back, and she brought friends. Metro City. Ryu's dojo. Moments after detection, the roof exploded inward with force that made structural engineering irrelevant. Not conventional explosive, but concentrated ki strike that reduced timber and tile to debris shower, figure descending through destruction with acrobatic grace that made combat entrance look choreographed. Juri-Han landed in center of training area with smile that made previous encounters seem restrained. Bandage covering her scarred eye, doing nothing to diminish predatory intensity radiating from her stance. Miss me, soldier boy? Because I've been thinking about you. Dreaming about you, imagining all the different ways I'm going to break that pretty armor and hear you scream my name. Her intact eye tracked across assembled martial artists with dismissive contempt. And you brought friends. How sweet. Ryu, Chun-Li, and... She noticed Guile. Oh, military muscle. That's adorable. You think numbers matter against me? Ryu's posture shifted into combat readiness with fluid efficiency that made transition look effortless. Jury, this isn't your fight. He's not your enemy. Stand down before someone gets hurt unnecessarily. Friend of yours? Ryu asked Chief while maintaining defensive position that suggested he expected violence regardless of diplomacy. No, Chief replied with characteristic brevity. His rifle already raised toward Jury with targeting solution that Mjolnir's systems calculated automatically. Jury laughed with genuine amusement that made threat assessment complicated. Not yet, but we're going to become very close, intimately familiar with each other's capabilities. I'm going to learn every weak point in that armor, every limitation in your training, every psychological trigger that makes soldiers break. And then, her smile widened. Then I'm going to use that knowledge to tear you apart so slowly, you'll beg me to finish it. She moved with speed that made previous combat look like warm-up exercise, blitzing toward Chief with velocity that normal human eye couldn't track. Kai-enhanced kick aimed at his helmet with force that would have decapitated unarmored opponent. Chief's shields flared as impact connected, energy barrier absorbing kinetic force, while his counterstrike targeted her center mass with armored fist that carried Mjolnir's full servo-assisted strength. Jury twisted mid-combination to convert direct hit into glancing blow. Her feng shui engine processing combat data faster than normal human cognition could achieve, on landing in crouch that suggested she'd maintained perfect control throughout exchange. "You're getting better," Jury observed with approval that made compliments sound like threat. "Faster responses, more aggressive counters. You've been training, adapting to how we fight. That's good. That makes this fun. Because I've been adapting too, studying recordings of our first encounter, analyzing your movement patterns, identifying the tells that give away your intentions before you execute them. You're predictable, soldier, and predictability is fatal against someone like me." She attacked again, combination that mixed Taekwondo's acrobatic kicks with street fighting brutality, each strike testing different angle of Chief's defenses, probing for weaknesses that systematic analysis could exploit. Chief adapted with Spartan tactical flexibility, using MJOLNIR's mobility systems to create distance when her speed advantage became overwhelming, deploying flashbangs to disrupt her feng shui engine's targeting, executing counters that turned her aggression into liability through precise timing that decades of combat experience provided. But Jury was learning. Each exchange refined her understanding of how Chief fought. Each failed attack revealed information about Mjolnir's capabilities. Each counter she survived taught her how to anticipate Spartan tactics that military training made predictable. "She's adapting faster than you are," Cortana warned through private channel with analysis that made concern sound clinical. "Her attack patterns are evolving in real time. She's not repeating mistakes, not falling for same feints twice. And her energy signature is increasing. She's holding back, testing you, gathering data for when she decides to commit fully. Chief, this is opponent whose learning curve matches or exceeds yours. That's extremely dangerous." Chun-Li moved to flank Jury with professional coordination that law enforcement training had refined. "Jury, you're assaulting civilians, destroying property, engaging in combat without provocation. Stand down or I'm taking you into custody." "Try it," Jury invited, while maintaining focus on Chief, her peripheral awareness tracking Chun-Li's positioning without apparent effort. "I've beaten you before. I'll beat you again. But not today. Today is about him. About making sure Soldier Boy understands that I'm not just random psychopath he can dismiss. I'm the nightmare that's going to haunt every deployment. Every mission. Every quiet moment when he thinks he's safe. The sky tore open. Not metaphorically. Not as dramatic exaggeration of atmospheric disturbance. Literally tore. Reality fracturing with violence that made dimensional displacement look gentle. Massive aperture opening above Metro City with energy signature that Cortana's sensors immediately classified as non-terrestrial technology. Chief's combat instinct screamed recognition before conscious analysis confirmed identification. Slipspace rupture, Covenant technology. They followed us. Through the breach. Vessels that made Earth's largest warships look like children's toys. Ships designed with aesthetic that suggested religious significance rather than pure military function. Hulls that gleamed with exotic alloys humanity couldn't replicate. And broadcasting across all frequencies. Message that made diplomatic resolution impossible. Elite commander's voice resonated through translation systems that made alien language comprehensible. Heretic Spartan, demon who destroyed sacred ring, humanity's champion who defies God's will. This world will burn as payment for your sins. These primitives will die screaming. Their civilization will become monument to what happens when lesser species harbor those who oppose Covenant's divine mandate. Prepare for judgment, prepare for extinction, prepare to watch everything you tried to protect turn to ash and glass. Metro City's emergency broadcast systems activated with warnings about unidentified aerial contacts, military scrambling interceptors that conventional doctrine said could engage atmospheric threats, a civilian population beginning evacuation procedures that peacetime complacency had made theoretical rather than practiced. Chun-Li stared at descending Covenant vessels with expression mixing professional assessment and genuine shock. Aliens? Those are actual alien spacecraft. That's not possible. That's science fiction. That's my Tuesday. Guile interrupted with dark humor that made catastrophe sound routine, his military training making threat assessment automatic despite confronting enemy that exceeded anything Earth had encountered. And if Soldier Boy says they followed him, that means they're hostile. That means we're looking at invasion scenario that our conventional forces aren't equipped to counter. That means, he looked at Chief, that means you're about to earn whatever alliance you were negotiating. Because I'm guessing you know how to fight those things. Yes, Chief confirmed, while rifle tracked nearest Covenant dropship beginning atmospheric descent. Covenant standard assault deployment. Multiple Phantoms carrying infantry and light armor, supported by Banshee air superiority fighters. Ground forces will include elites, grunts, jackals, possibly hunters, depending on what resources they committed to pursuit. They're technologically superior to Earth's current military. Their weapons operate on principles you haven't developed. Plasma-based energy systems, directed energy weapons, personal shields on elite-class combatants. And your conventional forces will suffer catastrophic casualties engaging them without proper tactical coordination. Ryu's stance shifted from ready position into something approaching certainty. Then we fight together. You provide tactical knowledge, we provide combat capability, and we demonstrate to these invaders that Earth, regardless of which dimension it occupies, is not conquered easily. Jury watched Covenant vessels with expression that Chief's tactical assessment couldn't immediately parse. Not fear, not concern, but calculation mixed with something that looked almost like anticipation. Well, this just got interesting. Aliens invading, Soldier Boy getting backup from his universe, and me stuck deciding whether I want to kill you or help you kill them. She cracked her knuckles with audible satisfaction. You know what? I'm going to table our fight. Temporarily, because I want you at full strength when I finally break you, and that means keeping these space freaks from killing you before I get my turn. Don't mistake this for alliance, Spartan. This is just me protecting my investment. The first Covenant dropship landed 3 blocks away with impact that shook buildings, rear bay opening to disgorge troops that Metro City's population had never encountered. Elites in ceremonial armor moving with predatory grace, grunts in their methane-breathing apparatus scurrying for defensive positions, jackals deploying energy shields that made them mobile cover for advancing forces. And they opened fire. Not with conventional weapons that Earth's militaries would recognize. With plasma, superheated gas contained by magnetic fields, bolts that could melt through steel and concrete, weapons that made kinetic firearms look primitive. Civilian casualties were immediate. Buildings collapsed under sustained bombardment. Vehicles exploded when plasma ignited fuel systems. Pedestrians who hadn't completed evacuation died screaming as energy weapons reduced human tissue to ash. Chief's tactical assessment processed horror with professional detachment that allowed function despite emotional response that witnessing civilian deaths triggered. Ryu, Chun-Li, evacuation coordination. Get civilians to shelters that can withstand plasma bombardment. Underground if possible. Stone or concrete structures that provide thermal insulation. Guile, contact military command. Tell them conventional engagement is suicide. They need to establish kill zones where our forces can engage with tactical advantage rather than rushing into plasma fire. And Jury. He looked at woman who'd been trying to kill him minutes earlier. You want to fight something dangerous? Prove you can work with allies instead of just operating solo. Cover my approach while I engage their command structure. Jury's smile suggested she appreciated being given combat role. rather than protective assignment. Finally, someone who understands what I'm good for. Don't slow me down, soldier boy. I'm fast, I'm vicious, and I really don't like being told what to do by religious fanatics with bad fashion sense. They moved as impromptu unit. Chief's tactical coordination providing strategic framework, Jury's speed creating openings that conventional forces couldn't achieve. Ryu's ki-enhanced strikes proving that Earth's martial artists could damage enemies who considered humans primitive prey. Chief engaged elite commander with precision that 3 decades of Covenant combat had refined. Controlled bursts from MA-5C targeting weak points in energy shields. Grenades deployed to disrupt formation cohesion. Movement patterns that made him difficult target despite Mjolnir's mass. The elite responded with energy sword igniting, mandibles spreading in battle cry that made aggression sound religious, charging with speed that powered armor amplified beyond baseline Sangheili capability. They clashed, energy blades scraping across Mjolnir's shields with discharge that made air smell like ozone. Chief's combat knife deflecting follow-up strike that would have penetrated shield gap near neck seal. Ungrappling at close quarters where training and experience determined outcome more than technology. Jury intercepted Elite's flank with kick that carried enough ki-enhanced force to crack energy shields. Her feng shui engine processing combat data to identify optimal strike points, attacking with viciousness that made Covenant warrior reassess threat priority. "Wrong time," Chief said while exploiting distraction Jury created. His knife finding gap in Elite's armor that regenerating shields couldn't protect, blade penetrating deep enough to sever critical arteries. The Elite collapsed with death that honored combat even while ending it. "There's never a wrong time to fight," Jury replied while engaging Jackal Squad with acrobatic assault that made their shield wall irrelevant. Her speed letting her attack from angles defensive formation couldn't cover. "But I'll admit, there's definitely right time. And watching these alien freaks die is very satisfying. Don't die on me, Spartan. I'm not done with you yet." She executed combination that killed 3 jackals in as many seconds, then pivoted to help Chief eliminate grunt reinforcements that were attempting to flank their position. The battle raged across Metro City with intensity that made previous conflicts look restrained. Covenant forces attempting to establish beachhead that would let them deploy heavy armor. Earth's defenders fighting with combination of modern military equipment and superhuman martial arts capability. Civilians caught between technological warfare and ki-enhanced combat that their civilization wasn't designed to withstand. And then, salvation arrived from unexpected direction. Sky tore open again. Different signature, different energy profile, different vessels emerging through slip space rupture that made Covenant breach look small. UNSC ships, frigates and destroyers that had been tracking Covenant fleet, following them through dimensional barrier to continue engagement that Earth's displacement had temporarily interrupted. Cortana's voice carried relief that AI shouldn't technically feel. "Chief, I'm detecting UNSC-IFF transponders. It's the Infinity. Captain Lasky followed the Covenant through whatever dimensional breach they used. We've got backup. We've got fleet support. We've got..." Her avatar flickered. "We've got way home if we can stabilize the rupture they created." UNSC fleet entering atmosphere, Chief transmitted to assembled defenders. "Friendly forces. They'll engage Covenant orbital assets and provide fire support for ground operations. Guile, coordinate with them. Provide targeting data for Covenant positions that risk excessive civilian casualties if engaged without precision strikes. Ryu, Chun-Li, maintain defensive perimeter. And Jury..." "I know," Jury interrupted with smile that made cooperation sound temporary. "Keep fighting aliens. Don't let them kill you before I get my rematch. Standard psychopath protocols. I'm familiar with the concept." UNSC frigates opened fire with MAC cannons that made Covenant plasma look restrained. Kinetic impactors moving at percentage of light speed, hitting Covenant cruisers with force that made armor irrelevant. Destroying ships that had glassed human colonies through overwhelming application of physics. The Covenant forces on ground recognized their orbital support was being eliminated, began fighting with desperation that made tactical withdrawal impossible, determined to complete objective even if completion meant dying in process. Chief coordinated defense with experience that Covenant war had refined, establishing kill zones that concentrated enemy forces, deploying supporting fires that UNSC vessels provided, using local enhanced combatants as force multipliers that conventional doctrine wouldn't account for. Jury fought beside him with efficiency that obsession sharpened rather than dulled, her attacks complementing his tactical positioning despite them having no formal combat coordination, and learning his rhythm through observation and adapting her style to create synergy that made their combined effectiveness exceed some of individual capabilities. "You're good at this," Jury observed, while eliminating elite that had been attempting to flank Chief's position. Coordinating, leading, making disparate forces work together despite having different capabilities and objectives. That's not just tactical skill, that's understanding people, understanding what motivates them, what makes them fight effectively. You're not just soldier, you're leader. And that, she executed finishing strike. That makes you even more interesting than I thought. Don't think this means I like you, Jury added while helping Chief eliminate Covenant command post that was coordinating ground forces. I don't, Chief replied with honesty that made statement sound tactical rather than personal. Jury smirked with expression that suggested she appreciated directness. Good, because when this is over, when aliens are dead and UNSC establishes whatever forward base they're planning, I'm coming for you again. This alliance is temporary, tactical necessity. The moment civilians are safe and invasion is repelled, we go back to being enemies. Understood? Understood, Chief confirmed, while plasma bombardment forced them both into cover. But until then, you fight with us, you protect civilians, you demonstrate that obsession with breaking me doesn't override basic human decency that makes you fight for people who can't defend themselves. Don't confuse temporary cooperation with redemption arc, Jury warned. I'm not hero, not protector, not defender of humanity's noble spirit. I'm psychopath who happens to prefer you alive so I can kill you personally rather than letting aliens do it. That's extent of my altruism. The Covenant retreat began with recognition that orbital superiority had been lost, remaining ground forces attempting to extract before UNSC could deploy overwhelming force, leaving behind casualties and equipment that represented significant intelligence value. Metro City stood damaged but intact, civilian casualties in thousands rather than millions that full-scale invasion would have caused, infrastructure salvageable despite Covenant assault and Chi-enhanced combat that made conventional warfare look restrained. And in aftermath, Jury watching Chief from distance with expression mixing satisfaction and anticipation, touching bandage that covered scar he'd given her, smile suggesting she was already planning their next encounter. She disappeared into urban landscape before UNSC forces could question her involvement, leaving Chief standing among defenders who just survived alien invasion through cooperation between dimensions. Metro City, UNSC Forward Operating Base. 48 hours after Covenant retreat. The temporary command center occupied what had been Metro City's convention facility before Covenant invasion transformed civilian infrastructure into military necessity. Prefabricated UNSC structures integrated with local architecture. Holographic displays showing tactical overlays of city that combined Cortana's analysis with Earth's mapping data, and everywhere. Evidence that two civilizations were learning to coordinate despite operating on fundamentally different technological and philosophical frameworks. Master Chief stood before holographic tactical display, showing dimensional rupture data that Cortana had been analyzing continuously since UNSC arrival, her avatar manifesting with expression mixing frustration and scientific fascination. The slip space breach is stabilizing, not closing, stabilizing. That's unprecedented. Normally, dimensional ruptures collapse once energy source maintaining them is removed, but this one is self-sustaining, like it punched hole in reality that's now permanent feature rather than temporary anomaly. I've run every analysis protocol I possess. The rupture connects our universe to this one through pathway that physics says shouldn't exist, but demonstrably does. And Chief, her voice carried weight. I still can't find method to reverse transit, can't engineer return journey. The breach allows one-way passage from our reality to theirs, but not reciprocal. We're not just displaced. were potentially permanently stranded. Before Chief could process implications, Captain Thomas Lasky entered Command Center with expression mixing command authority and genuine concern, his presence representing UNSC's official response to situation that exceeded normal operational parameters. Master Chief, good to see you intact despite circumstances that intelligence briefings suggested should have been catastrophic. Cortana's preliminary reports indicate you've been here approximately 72 hours. Engaged local enhanced combatants, established working relationship with this world's defenders, and somehow managed to turn what should have been first contact disaster into functional alliance. That's... Lasky paused. That's exactly the kind of improvisation that makes Spartans valuable beyond simple combat capability. UNSC Command wants full debrief, complete tactical assessment, intelligence about local capabilities and potential strategic value. But first... His expression softened fractionally. Are you all right? Operating alone without support structure is strain that conventional doctrine doesn't prepare anyone for. Even Spartans. I'm functional, Chief replied with characteristic understatement that made personal welfare secondary to mission status. Local defenders proved capable allies despite lacking UNSC technology. Their enhanced combatants achieve superhuman performance through discipline and KI manipulation rather than augmentation. Some individuals demonstrate combat effectiveness comparable to Spartan 2 performance levels, possibly exceeding in specific tactical applications. They're assets that strategic coordination could integrate into broader defensive framework if dimensional stability allows sustained cooperation. Lasky studied holographic display showing Metro City's defensive positions with professional assessment. And the Covenant? Intelligence suggests they followed you through dimensional breach specifically to continue engagement. That implies vendetta that transcends normal military objectives. What made you priority target worth pursuing across dimensional barriers? Halo ring destruction, Cortana interjected with analysis that made catastrophic weapon systems sound like tactical consideration. Chief prevented Covenant from activating Forerunner superweapon that would have eliminated sentient life across galactic radius. That made him heretic in their theology, and demon that defied divine mandate. Target whose elimination justifies resource expenditure that strategic value wouldn't normally warrant. They followed us because religious conviction overrode tactical rationality. And that makes them dangerous in ways conventional enemy assessment doesn't account for. Zealots don't retreat, don't negotiate, don't accept defeat until physically incapable of continuing. We destroyed their immediate invasion force, but more will come if dimensional breach remains accessible. Before Lasky could respond, proximity alert activated with signature that Chief's tactical systems immediately recognized. Not hostile contact, but familiar energy pattern that made his combat instincts engage automatically. Juri Han materialized on building's exterior, visible through command center's reinforced windows. I perched on ledge that normal human couldn't access without climbing equipment, studying UNSC installation with interest that suggested she was evaluating defensive capabilities rather than planning immediate assault. She's back, Cortana observed with tone mixing analysis and concern. Biometric readings indicate elevated excitement but not immediate combat preparation. Heart rate consistent with anticipation rather than aggression. She's observing, gathering intelligence, probably planning next engagement with Chief now that alien crisis has been resolved and her self-imposed cooperation period has expired. Chief moved toward exit with efficiency that made response automatic. You're going out there, Lasky observed rather than questioned. To engage combatant who intelligence reports suggest has been attempting to kill you repeatedly. That's tactically inadvisable without backup and proper support protocols. She won't attack here, Chief replied with certainty that came from understanding opponent whose patterns he'd been studying. Too many witnesses, too much UNSC presence that might interfere. She wants personal combat. One-on-one engagement where outcome depends on skill rather than numerical advantage. She's issuing challenge. Declining would be interpreted as cowardice, would potentially damage working relationship with local defenders who value personal courage demonstrated through accepting combat when offered. He exited command center before Lasky could formalize objection. moving through UNSC security perimeter that parted for Spartan, whose clearance exceeded normal authorization levels, approaching building where Jury maintained observation position. She dropped from ledge with acrobatic grace that made descent look choreographed, landing in defensive stance that radiated readiness. Took you long enough, soldier boy. Thought maybe you were hiding behind your UNSC friends, using them as shields so you wouldn't have to face me alone. But here you are. No backup, no support. Just you and me and unfinished business that's been making me lose sleep thinking about all the ways this could end. The invasion is over, Chief stated with observation that made tactical situation clear. Civilians are safe. Covenant forces have retreated. Your self-imposed cooperation period should be concluded. Why are you here instead of simply attacking? Jury's expression shifted through something that might have been respect, if admitting such emotion didn't conflict with her carefully maintained psychopath persona. Because I realized something while we were fighting together. Something that pisses me off and fascinates me simultaneously. You're not just strong, not just skilled. You're dedicated, committed to protecting people you don't know, risking yourself for civilians who'll never appreciate what you sacrifice, fighting wars that never end because someone has to stand between innocents and monsters. That's... She paused, processing admission she apparently hadn't intended to make. That's admirable. In completely insane way, that makes me want to break you even more. Because if I can defeat someone with that level of conviction, it proves I'm stronger than nobility itself. Proves that power matters more than principles. You helped during invasion, Chief observed with statement that made her cooperation during crisis sound significant. Saved civilians, eliminated threats, coordinated with allies despite claiming you operate solo. That suggests principles matter to you more than you admit. That under psychopath persona is person who recognizes value in protecting those who can't defend themselves. Don't psychoanalyze me, Spartan, Jury warned, with voice carrying edge that made threat genuine. I helped because letting aliens kill you would have robbed me of satisfaction. Because I want to be one who breaks you, who proves that discipline and duty are just pretty words that shatter when someone stronger comes along. I'm not hero. Not redeemed villain learning power of friendship. I'm predator who temporarily allied with other predators because prey we wanted was being threatened by outside force. Now that force is gone. Now we're back to being enemies. Now, she assumed combat stance. Now I find out if you've gotten stronger since our last fight. If soldier's determination can overcome warrior's obsession. If... Proximity alert interrupted with signature that made both combatants pause. Not Covenant, not UNSC, but local energy pattern that Chief sensors had learned to recognize. Ryu approached with calm that suggested he'd been observing their confrontation, his presence radiating centeredness that transcended normal composure. Jury, Chief, your conflict is understandable. Warrior seeking to test herself against worthy opponent, and soldier maintaining defensive posture against persistent threat. But this isn't right place or time. Metro City is recovering from invasion. Civilians are traumatized. Infrastructure is damaged. Fighting here, now, shows disrespect for those who suffered. Shows that personal glory matters more than community welfare. If you must fight, his voice carried weight. Do so where casualties will be limited to participants. Where your conflict doesn't endanger innocents who've already paid enough price for battles they didn't choose. Jury's expression suggested she wanted to argue, but recognized valid point. Fine, I can wait. Can be patient when circumstances demand it. But soldier boy, her intact eye locked onto Chief's visor. This isn't over. This is postponement. Temporary ceasefire because I prefer you at full strength when I finally break you. Train, adapt, get stronger. Because next time we fight, I won't be holding back. Won't be testing, won't be gathering data. I'll be coming for you with everything I've learned, everything I've become, and we'll discover whether Spartan determination is enough against someone who's made destroying you into life's purpose. She departed with speed that made tracking difficult, disappearing into urban landscape with final look that promised future confrontation was inevitable rather than potential. Ryu studied Chief with assessment that combined warrior's perception and philosopher's insight. She's changed. Subtle changes that most wouldn't notice, but I've fought her before. Know how she operates. Normally, she's pure chaos, pure aggression seeking outlet. But when she talks about you, when she plans your encounters, there's structure, purpose. Almost like she's found meaning in obsession that transcends simple desire to hurt others. That's dangerous, but also potentially valuable. Because obsession focused on worthy opponent is step toward discipline, toward recognizing that some things matter beyond personal satisfaction. Don't mistake me. His voice carried warning. She's still dangerous, still willing to hurt innocents if it serves her goals. But seed of change has been planted. Whether it grows into something better or withers into renewed violence depends largely on how you respond when she returns. Before Chief could formulate response, Guile approached with military directness. Chief, got situation developing that needs Spartan touch. UNSC Command is establishing Forward Operating Base as permanent installation. They're calling it Joint Cooperation Initiative. Technology sharing, cultural exchange, military coordination between dimensions. That's diplomatic terminology for we're staying whether local governments approve or not. Some nations are nervous, worried about sovereignty, about Earth becoming protectorate rather than independent civilization. I need you to attend meeting. Provide perspective that makes UNSC presence sound like partnership rather than occupation. You're good at that. Making people trust you despite representing overwhelming force they can't resist. I'm soldier, Chief replied with observation that made diplomatic role sound incongruous. Not diplomat, not political officer. I follow orders, complete missions. My expertise is combat operations, not international relations. Your expertise, Guile corrected, is making impossible situations work. That translates to diplomacy better than you think. These representatives need to hear from Spartan who defended their city, who fought beside their champions, who demonstrated that UNSC presence means protection rather than conquest. You do that better through presence than any speech could achieve. Come to meeting. Stand there looking intimidating in armor that saved lives, and let them draw their own conclusions about whether alliance with your forces serves their interests. United Nations Emergency Session. New York, 6 hours later. The Assembly Chamber held representatives from nations that had witnessed Covenant invasion through satellite feeds and news broadcasts. Diplomats processing reality where alien warfare had transitioned from science fiction to documented fact. Military leaders recognizing that Earth's defensive capabilities were inadequate against threats that dimensional instability might introduce. Chief stood at presentation position with Mjolnir armor, drawing attention that formal dress uniforms couldn't command. Cortana's avatar manifesting beside him to provide technical analysis that human presenters couldn't match. The dimensional breach is permanent fixture, Cortana explained with holographic displays showing rupture's mathematical structure. Attempts to close it would require energy output exceeding what this Earth's current technology can generate. UNSC possesses theoretical capability, but practical application would risk destabilizing local space-time in ways that might create additional breaches rather than sealing existing one. That means dimensional barrier between our realities is now permeable. Means that threats from either universe can potentially cross. Covenant might return with larger forces. Other hostile factions from our reality might exploit pathway we've inadvertently created. And reciprocally, threats from your reality might discover our universe and create problems that UNSC wasn't prepared to face. That makes cooperation necessity rather than choice. Makes establishing joint defensive framework survival requirement rather than political option. Chinese representatives spoke with careful diplomacy that masked strategic calculation. And UNSC expects what in exchange for protection you're offering? Technology transfers, basing rights, integration of Earth's military forces into your command structure. History suggests powerful nations don't offer assistance without expectation of recompense that ultimately serves their interests rather than those they claim to protect. Chief's response came with honesty that made political calculation seem secondary. UNSC is stranded. Fleet elements that followed Covenant can't return home. Dimensional breach doesn't allow reverse transit. That means thousands of personnel are now refugees in your reality. We need resources, facilities. Cooperation from local governments. That's not altruism disguised as protection. That's mutual dependency. We defend this Earth because it's now only Earth we have access to. We share technology because improving your defensive capability makes our survival more likely when future threats emerge. This isn't occupation. It's integration born from necessity. We're not conquerors. We're allies who don't have choice about being allies because circumstances have eliminated alternatives. Russian representative processed that statement with assessment that decades of geopolitical maneuvering had refined. And this woman, this Juri Han, intelligence reports suggest she's been attempting to kill you repeatedly. Yet during invasion she fought alongside UNSC forces. Demonstrated capability that our analysts suggest exceeds what augmentation technology we're aware of could achieve. She represents, he searched for appropriate classification, enhanced combatant whose loyalty is questionable but capability is undeniable. How do you propose we address threat she represents? How do we ensure she doesn't become liability when next crisis emerges? You don't, Chief replied with tactical honesty that made threat management sound realistic rather than optimistic. Juri operates according to her own priorities. Can't be controlled through conventional authority. Can't be threatened into compliance. Can't be bribed or coerced or manipulated through normal channels. But she can be predicted. She wants worthy opponents. Wants combat that tests her limits. Wants to prove she's strongest through defeating those she respects. That makes her manageable, if not controllable. When threats emerge that satisfy her need for challenging combat, she'll engage. When those threats are eliminated, she'll return to personal vendettas. That's pattern that tactical planning can account for even if we can't direct her actions. Before discussion could continue, emergency broadcast interrupted with alert that made assembled diplomats recognize crisis was resuming. Unidentified energy signature detected approaching dimensional breach. Configuration matches neither UNSC nor Covenant. Analysis suggests significant power output, possibly hostile. UNSC fleet elements moving to intercept. All defensive forces placed on high alert. Through chamber's windows, visible in distant sky, dimensional rupture flaring with energy that suggested something massive was attempting transit. Ship emerging that made Covenant vessels look small by comparison. Design aesthetic that combined UNSC functionality with artistic elements that suggested civilization valuing both effectiveness and beauty. Cortana's analysis came with recognition. That's not Covenant, that's elite separatist faction. Sang Healy, who rejected Covenant theology and formed alliance with UNSC during final phase of war. They must have detected dimensional breach and followed Covenant forces through. But Chief, her voice carried concern. They don't know about cooperation we've established here, don't know that Earth is allied with UNSC rather than conquered territory. Their approach pattern suggests they're preparing for combat operations rather than diplomatic contact. We need to intercept before they misread situation and attack forces they should be coordinating with. Chief moved with efficiency that made crisis response automatic. Cortana, transmit UNSC identification codes. Establish communication with elite commander. Explain tactical situation. Make clear that Earth is allied territory rather than hostile. And he activated communication to Ryu. Prepare local defenders for potential combat in case diplomatic resolution fails. Elite separatists are allies, but they're also warriors whose honor requires demonstrating capability through combat. They might insist on testing Earth's defenders before accepting them as worthy partners. The elite vessel descended with controlled precision that made atmospheric entry look gentle, landing in designated coordinates that UNSC had cleared for potential reinforcement arrival. Bay opening to disgorge warriors who made Covenant forces look restrained by comparison. Sang Haley in ceremonial armor carrying energy weapons that crackled with barely contained power. Their commander approached Chief with posture radiating respect that transcended species barrier. Spartan, demon, warrior whose name is legend among those who fought beside humans during Great Schism. We detected Covenant forces pursuing you through dimensional anomaly, followed to provide support, to continue alliance that was forged in blood during final battles of war. But we arrived to find situation already resolved. To find you have established cooperation with this world's defenders. That is, his mandibles moved in expression that might have been approval. That is proper. That is warrior's way. Making allies through demonstrated capability, rather than demanding submission through threat. Your honor grows with each battle. Before Chief could formulate diplomatic response, familiar energy signature made his motion tracker activate with recognition that made situation predictably complicated. Jury appeared on nearby rooftop with smiles suggesting she'd been waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. Oh, this just keeps getting better. Aliens. More aliens. Different aliens who apparently respect Soldier Boy, and they look strong, really strong. Like they might actually give me challenge instead of just being target practice. Tell me, Spartan, her voice carried across distance, do your elite friends like to fight? Because I'm very interested in testing myself against warrior species that makes Covenant look weak by comparison. The elite commander studied Jury with assessment that combined warrior's evaluation and predator's interest. Small human demonstrates courage addressing Sangheili without fear. Shows readiness for combat despite size disadvantage. This is, his mandibles spread. This is admirable. If you wish to test yourself against elite warrior, such challenge would be honored. Combat brings understanding that words cannot achieve. But know this. His voice carried warning. Sangheili do not hold back against worthy opponents. Showing restraint would be insult. You challenge us, you accept possibility of death in service of proving your strength. Are you prepared for such stakes? Finally, Jury said with genuine satisfaction. Someone who understands, someone who won't lecture me about holding back or protecting civilians or any of that moral complexity garbage. Just pure combat, just testing strength against strength. This is, she looked at Chief. This is postponement, not cancellation. But I'll admit, fighting aliens who might actually kill me sounds more interesting than our usual dance. Don't think this means I've forgotten about you, Soldier Boy. Think of this as me getting warmed up, getting stronger. So when I do come for you, her smile widened. You'll face opponent who's been tested by warrior species and emerged victorious. Or died trying. Either way, it'll be memorable. She engaged Elite Commander with speed that made opening strike blur. Key-enhanced kick testing Sangheili combat reflexes that centuries of warfare had refined. The Elite responded with energy sword blocking her strike, his strength making her power seem manageable, his technique suggesting he'd fought opponents whose capability exceeded baseline human parameters. They clashed with intensity that made observation both fascinating and concerning. Jury's speed against Elite's power, her acrobatic unpredictability against his disciplined technique. Earth's enhanced martial artist against alien warrior whose species had been fighting since before human civilization emerged. Ryu watched beside Chief with expression mixing professional interest and philosophical concern. She's growing, learning. Each fight teaches her something new, makes her more dangerous, more refined. Eventually, his voice carried certainty. Eventually, she'll be ready to challenge you again. And when that happens, outcome won't be certain. Won't be soldier's tactical superiority overwhelming martial artist's skill. It'll be genuine test, where both combatants operate at levels that make victory dependent on factors that transcend simple capability measurement. Are you prepared for that? For fight where determination might not be enough? Chief processed question with tactical honesty. No one's ever truly prepared for combat against opponent who's made defeating you into life's purpose. But preparation is continuous process. I adapt, I learn, I evolve my capabilities to match escalating threats. That's what Spartans do, what soldiers do. What anyone does when alternative is accepting defeat before engagement even begins. Jury will return, stronger, faster, more refined. And when she does, his voice carried certainty. I'll be ready. Not because I'm confident in victory, but because readiness is only viable response when conflict is inevitable. Above them, dimensional rupture pulsed with energy suggesting additional transits were occurring. Not Covenant this time, but vessels from UNSC reality establishing permanent presence in world that had become humanity's latest frontier, civilization discovering that dimensional barriers were less absolute than physics suggested, and sometimes Sometimes stranded soldiers found home not in returning to origins, but in defending new reality that needed capabilities only displacement could provide. Cortana's avatar flickered with satisfaction, that AI processing completion of complex analysis. Chief, I've been reviewing dimensional mathematics, studying rupture structure, and I think, her voice carried cautious optimism, I think we might be able to engineer controlled transit eventually. Not now, not with current technology, but with combined resources from both Earths, with elite separatist technical knowledge, with time to develop proper theoretical framework, maybe we could make dimensional breach into gateway rather than one-way exile. Could establish permanent connection between realities. Could transform accident into achievement. Could create future where cooperation between dimensions becomes normal rather than crisis response. Chief finished, recognizing implications that stretched beyond simple tactical considerations into strategic vision that transcended single soldiers' objectives. He looked at Metro City recovering from invasion, at UNSC forces establishing permanent installations, at elite separatists finding new allies among Earth's defenders, at Jury fighting opponent who might finally satisfy her need for worthy combat, and recognized truth that displacement had taught him. Sometimes home wasn't place you came from. Sometimes home was place where capabilities you possessed made difference that mattered. Sometimes, very rarely, getting lost meant finding exactly where you needed to be, even if getting there required fighting psychopath who'd made breaking you into personal crusade, even if staying meant accepting that return might never happen, even if home became defined by battles fought rather than origins remembered. Jury's laughter echoed across battlefield where she traded strikes with elite warrior, her voice carrying promise. Next time, Spartan, next time I win, but until then, she executed combination that made alien combatant acknowledge her skill. Until then, I'm getting stronger, and that means you better do the same, because when we finally settle this, I want you at your absolute best, so defeating you actually means something. Master Chief has found temporary home in Street Fighter universe. UNSC forces establish permanent forward base as dimensional breach proves irreversible. Elite separatists join alliance creating multi-species coalition, but Juri Han grows stronger with each encounter, her obsession sharpening rather than fading. Akuma senses Spartan's presence, warrior whose discipline rivals his own. Covenant sends Arbiter-level commander through breach with mission to finish what initial invasion failed to achieve. And Cortana begins detecting anomalies suggesting dimensional rupture is affecting local reality in ways that make Street Fighter World's enhanced combatants even more dangerous. The alliance holds. The threats escalate. And sometimes, Soldier Without War discovers that finding new conflict means finding new purpose. Master Chief defended Earth across galaxies. Now he defends Earth across dimensions. And Juri Han waits in shadows, training, planning, obsessing over rematch that will determine whether Soldier's duty overcomes Warrior's obsession, or whether Psychopath's determination breaks even Spartan resolve. The battle continues. The dimensions collide, and Master Chief learns that some enemies become allies, some allies become friends, and some obsessed martial artists become rivals who make you stronger through refusing to let you rest.